Hey everyone, this is Sam with Korean Association. Welcome to Candidate Corner. And this is because we're the recipient of King County Voter Education Fund. Not only do we try to advocate for more new voter registration, but also when we go to when we submit our ballots to vote or we go to the polls to vote, many times people wonder like who really are our candidates, and so this is why we do these brief interviews so that you can really just get to know who they are on a personal level and really what they stand for and their platform. And we just do this more for informational purposes, so not really as an endorsement. It's not an endorsement and it's nonpartisan, so we just want all of us to be more sort of informed voters when you go to vote, as opposed to whether you're voting for any particular party line or anything like that. We believe that it's really important to understand who your candidates are first before you make, so that you can make more of an informed decision. Okay, so
Absolutely.
based on that, we're very, very honored to have here with us um, our Seattle, to me, hero and our veteran representative, Sharon Tamiko Santos, State Representative, District 37.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much
very
for
much.
joining. Yeah.
I really appreciate this
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we'll just ask Sharon a few questions. Representative Santos, she is running for re-election again for in this election cycle. And so I guess firstly, many times, I mean, you've been in this area so long, in the Beacon Hill area and in
Mhm.
Seattle and in your district, District 37. But you also may be a new face to many of us too, and to voters. And so perhaps we could just start off by if you could just give us a little bit about your background,
Sure.
and growing up in this area, and how was that, and how you got into all of this, like 20 years ago.
Well, longer
Yeah.
than that
Oh,
ago.
okay,
So,
okay. Yeah.
well, thank you again,
Yeah.
Sam, for this
Yeah. Of
opportunity. I'm
course.
very
Yeah.
excited to be able to have this conversation with you and introduce myself to your audience. Again, my name is Sharon Tomiko Santos, and I am a representative for the 37th Legislative District, which covers the Chinatown International District, a little bit of the Pioneer Square, Beacon Hill, Rainier Valley, Mount
Okay.
Baker, all the way down to Rainier Beach, Upper Rainier Beach, and including the unincorporated area of King County known as Skyway West
Skyway.
Hill.
Okay.
And I'm very proud to represent this district because it is the most diverse legislative district in the state of Washington, and because it was the district that helped raise me.
Mm,
Now, I wasn't born in Seattle, but I came to Seattle when I was 9 years old. We were talking earlier about the fact that we're both PKs, meaning we're
mhm.
both preacher's kids. And
Mhm.
my father is a minister, ordained minister in the United Methodist Church. He retired many years ago, but he, of course, retains his title as clergy. And his parishioners were many of the immigrants who came to Seattle from Japan prior to 1924. And I think that's a salient issue because the immigrants in
Mhm.
my district
Mhm.
filled every single neighborhood throughout the 37th district. So today, almost 1 in 4 persons, actually more than 1 in 4 persons in my district, was born in another country.
Wow.
And they came from all over Asia. They came from all the many parts of Africa. They came from Eastern Europe. Indeed, when I was growing up and attending school at Franklin High School, I'm a
Mhm.
proud graduate of Franklin
Oh,
High
Franklin.
School. Yes.
Is
Um,
Garfield your rival or?
Garfield was one of our high
Okay,
school rivals, but
got it.
I am an equal opportunity representative. Garfield is in my district.
Okay.
And of course, it's a friendly rivalry.
Okay. Okay.
But many of the kids that I attended school with
Mhm.
were part of our Jewish community. So
Mm.
there's uh, very cosmopolitan, I guess, is the way I would describe our community. I also grew up at a time where it was sort of the tail end of the civil rights movement. And
Mm.
so I had the great opportunity to learn from several of our significant civil rights leaders in this Pacific Northwest area, including beginning when I was about 13 years old. I was sent over to the Central Area Motivation Program as a CETA kid. The Comprehensive Employment and Training Act was a program, federal program for poor children. And there I met a very young Larry Gossett, who took me under his wing. And
Amazing.
so those were some of my first experiences in not just my neighborhood, because these were kids and families that helped raise me and informed my political perspective, shaped my worldview, but most of all, taught me the importance of public and community service.
I see. That was going to be my next question is that as a representative, so talk about how you actually kind of segued into that. And
Sure.
Was your community involvement and love for community kind of the main impetus for that, or were there other factors? Yeah.
Yes, actually, yes, and.
Okay. Okay.
I have to begin by saying because I was, as a young student in high school and to a certain extent in junior high school, already politicized. My mother was a teacher in the Seattle Public Schools, where she taught some of the most developmentally and intellectually disabled students. But she was part of a vanguard of students, or excuse me, teachers, who brought these students out of the institutions. Up to then, students were hidden away. They were not brought into our neighborhood schools. It's hard to believe that that's true now, but that
When
is
was that time period? Sorry.
60s and 70s.
Okay. Okay.
And so she helped bring those students into their neighborhood schools and classrooms. But she was also a union leader in the Seattle Teachers Association. And that becomes important because at that point in time, the Seattle School District and the unions were not seeing eye to eye. And so the union went on strike several times. And so my first political action was actually walking a strike line for better pay for teachers and more funding for education. That carried over as I grew older because Seattle Public Schools also faced eventually a lawsuit where we were found as a district to be segregated. And so a federal court judge ordered the desegregation of Seattle Public Schools. And I was very fortunate to be tapped by a young civil rights activist to learn more about how to engage and instead of allowing a judge in San Francisco who never knew the communities of Seattle to make the decision about how we were going to desegregate our schools, we wanted at the local level to have our voices represented. And so that became a key concept for me, is local control and having command of our own destinies, you know, that sense of self-determination. And so as a young student activist, I lobbied the Seattle superintendent, I lobbied the Seattle school board, and eventually I volunteered myself to be bused away from my South End home all the way to the North End. And my eyes were really opened to the level of inequity in our schools. And so that's become a real clarion call for me as a legislator, is to eliminate systemic inequities in education that unfortunately are burdens that are largely borne by students of color and poor students. So those are some of my earliest memories, and the immediate precipitating event for my running for office was exactly a situation where I felt at the time the Seattle superintendent and the Seattle school board were not engaging in an authentic and genuine and respectful fashion with the community of Rainier Beach High School and the surrounding neighborhoods. And it just so happened there was a position that opened up, and I decided if I couldn't get them to listen to us as a member of the community, then I would run for a higher office and force them to listen to us.
If you're not gonna do it optionally, then do it forcibly.
Well,
Well,
yes, I guess. Yes,
yeah, because we can. Great, thank you for that background. I wanted to, if I could, you were talking about going on about, on just a little bit more on the civil rights aspect,
sure.
and you've been through it and you've seen it, and you mentioned that you grew up on the tail end of that, and so, we have obviously great leaders such as MLK who kind of led the way there. When you speak about ethnic or racial inequity, and so you were an advocate for this. Um, what was actually going on there? If we get into the weeds a little bit, what inequities were you referring to, and is that something that even still through today is something that we should still advocate for?
Oh,
Yeah. What
absolutely.
are these issues that are actually going on? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I will just share with you that some of what talked about earlier was around educational inequities, where we see differences in the performance outcomes of certain groups of students,
Okay.
which for many, many generations, people assigned blame to the student and to the family.
Mm.
Um, and what
You're
we
referring to academic performance?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Academic performance.
Okay.
And one of the things I learned when
Uh-huh.
I volunteered myself to be bused to
Yeah.
another school was how much differently the school in the North Ends were being resourced
Mm.
than the schools in the South End.
Okay.
So, how are our elected officials making decisions
Mm.
about which resources go where?
Hmm.
If you have greater need, doesn't it make sense that you would assign more resources in those areas?
So in the North End, did that happen to skew a particular way, ethnically and
Yes,
demographically? Okay.
yes, yes,
Okay.
which was
Okay.
why the
Yeah.
whole reason that the Seattle Public Schools as
Uh-huh.
a district
Uh-huh.
lost a lawsuit, a federal
I
lawsuit,
see. Okay.
and that's why
Okay.
we had the desegregation case.
Okay.
But that wasn't the only example. So that's one example of resource distribution that shows up in academic performance.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change that?
Mm.
But I think another issue that I became very close to as I grew up is the economic inequities and the
Mm.
lack of economic opportunities. So I mentioned I was assigned as a CETA kid to the Central Area Motivation Program and was taken under the wing of Larry Gossett.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it becomes important to remember that CETA was a program under the Manpower Act that was part of President Johnson's war on poverty. And one of the things that the Central Area Motivation Program and many other community action agencies of that era focused in on was that economic opportunities were not um, were also inequitably made available. So that's why you had so many urban poor of who were black, so
Mm-hmm.
many poor people who were Native American, so many poor people who were Asian American, because they didn't have the same economic opportunities as other. And so we are all familiar today with EEO,
Mm-hmm.
equal employment opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But until that was actually passed, it was really important for communities to come together and try and provide employment training and employment matchmaking for our own communities. Um, it was during this period of time that you had the contractors, the minority contractors, who were also being shut out from all of the big major public works opportunities like the development of SeaTac Airport, like the building of the Seattle Central Community College building.
Intentionally being
Yes,
shut.
intentionally being shut out because
Wow.
they were headed up by people of color,
Yeah.
whether they were the Takasaki family,
Hmm.
whether it was the Black Contractors Association.
Hmm.
They were being intentionally shut out. And so that's why Martin Luther King Jr.'s clarion call for a multiracial coalition
Hmm.
for equality was such a seminal and, if you will, radical message. Because he also said it's not just about poor people of color. It's also about the poor whites who are also being shut out. But let's
Interesting.
take a look at the demographics. And the demographics say most of the people who are benefiting from employment opportunities, from contracting opportunities, from the opportunity to build their own businesses were white.
Mm.
How do we make sure everyone gets a piece of the pie? And so um, I was very fortunate to, so I wasn't part of the generation that quote unquote marched in the streets in the 60s,
Yeah.
but I was part of the generation that was able to see the outcome of those actions that included the building of many community-based organizations, very intentionally aimed at whether it was the Black community, whether it was the Asian community, whether it was the Native community. And I saw the power of both working together, but also focusing in on the needs of our communities.
I see. I see. Um, so fast forward to today, where District 37 in particular, as you mentioned, is very, very diverse. And that's what gives us our strength, I believe, in Seattle, and if not even more today. So does that message still ring true and clear that representation is more important now, particularly, let's say, even in our AA and HPI communities, that we need to be out there and to have a voice at the table, a seat at the table, and to make sure that our voices are heard? Is that even more true now? And if so, why is that important?
Yeah.
Maybe for our youngsters and our young generation that who are perhaps indifferent or not wanting to get involved. Can you maybe give a message to them? Why is this? Yeah.
Absolutely. I would love to be able to say, Sam, that the state of Washington, that King County or Seattle has actually conquered racial discrimination and that there is equity of opportunity for all people. But if you look at all of the metrics, it's not true. If you are an immigrant or a refugee, the chances are that you are either having to go into business on your own, that you may be experiencing challenges with finding a promotion because of assumptions about, where you come from. We, of course, as Asian Americans, suffer from the model minority myth. And
Yeah.
where that really plays into, I think, the political realm is that so many of our elders, and especially our immigrant elders, there's a saying, I think that is fairly common in many Asian NHPI communities,
Hmm.
that you put your head down and you do the work
Right.
because we believe in meritocracy. And
Right.
the worst thing to do is stick your head up because that's the nail that gets knocked down.
Hmm.
And that is, I respect that very much because that's how our elders were
Right.
able to survive and thrive so that you and I,
It's that saving face
exactly.
culture. Yeah. Yeah.
But you and I can look around and realize unless we speak up, no one's going to help us help ourselves. And I think this is where the lessons of history become very, very important. So I guess what I would say to especially younger people that might be thinking is it is important to understand where we've come from and the
Hmm.
lessons they learn. I have been able to apply these very directly in the legislature. And I'd like to give you just a couple of examples
Please.
of
Yeah.
that.
Please. Yeah.
Many years ago, for the younger generation, it was many yeyears ago. Didn't feel that long right now to me, but the 9/11 attack
Mm-hmm.
occurred. The last time there was an attack on the United States was during World War II, and we know what happened as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the government of the United States and its independent state governments all reacted in the same way, which was we must tighten our security. We have to make sure that we are regulating our borders so that we don't allow terrorists in, that we don't fund terrorists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So every state, including ours, had a package of bills that were introduced, usually by very important people, whether it was the governor, whether it was the state attorney general. In our case, it was both. That was billed as an anti-terrorist type of several bills. Among them was a bill that was aimed to stop the unwitting funding of terrorist organizations. And so we wanted to regulate money transmitting businesses. One, that was an important goal because money transmitting businesses up to that point were not regulated anywhere, not by the feds, not by the state. So, good idea. And the bill, as it was drafted, was very similar in all of the states. That's in terms of having to register and having to pass through all kinds of scrutiny by the Department of Financial Institutions. Again, good thinking. What the Department of Financial Institutions and our state government had not done was they had not done outreach into many of our immigrant and refugee communities. And I ask you to think about that for a moment, especially if you are a refugee, but even many immigrant communities rely on money transmitting services to help support their families overseas. If you're a refugee, that almost by definition means that there is no government, there is no infrastructure in wherever country you originated from. And so we have very different ways of helping to support our families, whether they are in refugee camps or simply in our home countries. And the Department of Financial Institutions had not done any outreach. Why should I care about that? I cared about that because I did my homework and I read the U.S. Patriot Act. And the U.S. Patriot Act said that any immigrant or non-citizen who engaged in an activity that was prohibited by the state would be immediately deemed to have committed a federal crime, not a civil crime, but a criminal act, which was a direct shot to deportation. And no one bothered to look at this. I, on the other hand, because I am an historian by training, actually, and had done a lot of research around how do immigrants assimilate and acclimate to their new countries, understood that this has always been a feature of immigrant communities and wanted to make sure that we didn't unintentionally and inadvertently criminalize hardworking immigrants and refugees here in the United States. So I stopped that bill.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I wanted to touch upon going back to 37, if possible. And so, throughout your extensive career, you're still running for re-election. And could we ask, what is the reason? Because I'm sure there's a lot of different things that you could do, and so you choose to take this step and continue to be our representative, which we're very appreciative and thankful for. But what is the main reason? Is there unfinished business? And if so, if reelected, then kind of what's kind of on your plate in terms of your immediate priorities and uh, what's important for you to get done for District 37 going forward? Yeah,
Well, thank you for that
yeah.
question. And there are, of course, there's not any single reason that I'm
Hmm.
running for reelection. It is there are many. First of all, I want to say I am very proud to be one of the veterans of the legislature. And I think that's important because, to be very honest with you, Sam,
Hmm.
it took me 6 years before I felt like, oh, I get this job. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, we are a citizen legislature, we're part time. So I go in for 105 days, then I go in for 60 days, then I go in for 105 days, then I go for 60 days. So when you think about 6 years, it really is only about the equivalent of 2 years
I see.
of 2.5 maybe years of experience and getting the rhythm of the
Hmm.
legislative process.
Hmm.
Well, that was a long time ago now, but the reason I raise that is because um, one of the reasons I think our state doesn't need term limits is because this is a natural cycle during an election period. And I look at my colleagues, and the vast majority of them have been here for less than 10 years,
Mm.
which means that they're still
Right.
just getting the feel for it. And I
Acclimating.
think
Yeah.
it's important that we have people who understand the process,
Hmm.
who have built up the relationships in order to be effective
Hmm.
in their mission. And you asked, what's on my plate?
Yeah.
What do I care about?
Yeah.
Um, I started by saying I'm very proud to represent this district, the 37th district, because it's the district that helped raise me. And many of the issues that our communities throughout the 37th district have always been challenged by continue to plague not only the 37th, but our society today. And chief among them is the issue of affordability. Now, I'm the daughter and granddaughter of American citizens who were incarcerated during World War II for no reason other than who they were. My mom was born in the United States, but her mom was born in the United States. And so I know that traumatic experience for them, which runs through my veins, is very sensitive to all of the reasons why people get displaced, whether it's discrimination or whether it's poverty. So my grandma and grandpa were migrant farmers. So that's the family my mom grew up in.
Hmm.
And in this day and age, when prices are skyrocketing so fast, our communities are being priced out of their housing. And sometimes this is housing, the only home that somebody has ever lived in. And so I am really committed to making sure that there's not displacement of people because of skyrocketing costs.
Hmm.
I am absolutely committed to building more and a variety of housing options for folks and ensuring, especially, that our elders who work so hard to not only build our communities, but stay in our communities, get to stay there. I'm also really committed to making sure that we have safe communities. I think one of the things that really hurts my heart is that in the Chinatown International District, we see people who need a lot of services,
Hmm.
and at the same time, those individuals who need a lot of services are presenting a hazard for many of our elders. The fact that we have community based organizations in the Chinatown International District that are teaching our elders self defense
Hmm.
just so that they can go walk down the street,
Yeah.
I think that says something about us. We need to have safe streets where those elders can walk, but also our children can walk. We need to make sure that we have good schools that lift up each and every child, not just some children. We need to make sure that working moms and dads have affordable, accessible child care so that they can go to work. And then finally, I have to say, above all else, because I am the daughter of the civil rights movement, I'm absolutely committed to our civil rights. And whether you are an immigrant or a refugee, whether you are a person of color, whether you are a person who is differently abled, or if you differently identify, if you're a working class individual, you are entitled to all of the protections of the United States Constitution and our state constitution and our laws in the state of Washington. And I have always been committed to that. I will never back down from that. And today, as we see what is going on in this federal administration, I think we need strong, experienced voices who are willing to stand up.
Thank you for that. I was going to kind of maybe finish it off here, but you touched upon a topic that I feel like we at GSKA cannot really have an opinion on either side of this. But when you touched upon the federal level and what is going on with immigration and naturalization currently, can you just share about a little bit of your perspective briefly as a civil rights activist and activist for communities of color? Perhaps your perspective on why we as people perhaps have inalienable rights and due process. Is that something that what you care to share about there?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Again, I will say, we will start by restating, I am the daughter and the granddaughter of American-born citizens who were put behind barbed wire. My mother was 9 years old at the time. And her crime was that she was Japanese American. If we don't think that that can happen again, then we are only fooling ourselves. The Chinese Americans almost were incarcerated in the 1960s because of the anti-communism Red Scare that was running through the United States. Muslims were almost threatened with incarceration after 9/11. We must have that long memory to say, we the people. It is a part of our birthright, which, by the way, is a birthright that was granted to us by an Asian American, who Kim Ark Wong, who brought the lawsuit before the United States Supreme Court, establishing birthright citizens. So as Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, we more than any other group have every reason to stand up for and to protect the inalienable rights that are granted not just through our right of birth, but for all of those individuals who, like my father, came to this country with hope, came to this country with the heart to engage in public service first as a seminarian and then as an ordained minister, to support members of our community here, but who was not a citizen by birth and elected to become a naturalized citizen because he met and married an American citizen and he had American-born children. He studied hard. I helped him remember the Pledge of Allegiance. I remember that very clearly. These are rights that we forswear to, either because we've vowed to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States, or because of the mere privilege of being born in the United States. That is our duty as American citizens.
I think we'll end it right there. Very well said. Thank you very much,
Thank you so
Representative
much. I
Santos. Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for coming. Yeah,
Yes, I appreciate it.
yeah, of course. Everyone again. Oh, lastly, you're running for re-election, and so
Yes.
how can maybe just a few encouraging words for District 37, and
Oh, yes.
how can we help you? Yeah, your
Well,
website and
yes, thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Thank you for asking.
yeah.
My website is www.votesharontomikosantos.com. So that's all one word, votesharontomikosantos.com. And there you will be able to access information. You can sign up to volunteer or get more information. Um, Always welcome a telephone call at 206 326 9042, or you can email me at info@friendsofsantos.com.
Okay, great. Thank you very much again. Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody, this is Representative Sharon Tamiko Santos. Thank you for sharing your background, your history, and your heart. And she's currently our House Representative for State Representative for District 37, Chinatown and Beacon Hill, Seattle area international district. And so she's running for re-election again. And there's a primary election and then also a general election. So most importantly, please, everyone, get out the vote. Your vote does matter. And this is why we're doing this, so that you can get to know your candidates. So please take the time. I know we're all very busy, but take the time. But most importantly, just get out there and vote. Thank you for joining. Okay, bye-bye.